All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is David DiLorenzo of Association Analytics. And once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual discussion series where we like to bring together leaders and learners every week in a fun and engaging session that's aimed at optimizing business results and staying relevant in challenging times. Today's session is about how using what you know about your members to be there in their moment of need with relevant information to build engagement and member loyalty. We're going to take a look at how to leverage data to know members better and use that information to improve their experiences. We're also going to take a look at mobile apps, and the mobile apps are not just for conferences. We're going to learn about innovative ways to keep members informed and engaged year-round through mobile devices. And just a note, as always, we are recording, so there'll be a recorded version of this webinar available on the website. And this is an interactive session. Our panelists are great, but we want to hear from you. So during the session, please use the chat tool to connect with each other, to talk to us on the panel. Questions always come in through the chat, but we do also have a Q&A button for specific questions if you want to use that. We don't really care. You use the tools how you want. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters. We've got a great panel today. Reggie Henry needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. He's the Chief Information and Engagement Officer at ASAE. He's a known thought leader in the association industry and speaks regularly on technology and strategy issues. Welcome, Reggie.
Thank you, sir.
We also have Brad LaTour. Brad's the COO and the co-founder of Clowder, and a lifelong entrepreneur driven by curiosity and continuous improvement for his clients. He joined Clowder just 5 years ago when it was just a mobile agency and helped lead the transformation into a SaaS-based mobile product company. He also currently serves as the president for Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating, known as CRAB. That's a nonprofit dedicated to serving those with disabilities through the joys of sailing. And when he's not working or volunteering, he spends as much time as he can with his wife and 4 daughters. That's right, 4 daughters. So if we have time after the show, we want to hear a little bit more about that adventure. And for those of you just joining us, once again, this is our virtual webinar entitled Stay Connected, Timely and Relevant Member Communications. Remember, as Julie said, it's Thirsty Thursday, and now it's officially happy hour, so make sure you have your cup full and nearby as I turn it over to Julie.
All right, thank you. All right, so I always like to have a just for fun at the beginning. I think the last one we did what we're binge watching, which somebody had mentioned Schitt's Creek, which I've started watching, and it's hilarious. I actually had my background as the woman's wig wall, but I was like, that's really weird if people don't know what that show is. So I changed it. Today's just for fun is your favorite quarantine beverages. So these are some of mine. These aren't all of mine. More so just the glass of red wine in the middle. The Waterloo is delicious sparkling water. Watermelon is my favorite. And then Yogi tea. I drink way too much of it. That's actually what I have here. What is this one? The Perfect Energy. So all of these are enjoyable. We encourage you to throw in the chat what you guys have been enjoying. Share some cocktail recipes. It's a good time to share and chat with some of your folks that you don't typically see. So I'm going to ask Reggie. I saw you first. So what's your favorite quarantine beverage?
So I'm not a big drinker, you know that.
Yeah, sparkling water works, tea.
Tonic water, Seagram's tonic water.
There you have it. What about you, Brad?
You know, it's probably predictable, but Corona Light for sure.
I love it. Water, that's always a good one. We have all kinds of ones going into the chat, so please share and share some good recipes with everybody. All right, so what are we doing today? We're going to learn how to use real-time data and trends to drive meaningful strategies and content. Really important now, but also can carry forward into your strategies. Leverage data from multiple sources to segment and target. We're going to hear specifically around how ASAE is leveraging different data to do so. And then use data across business areas to discover the most relevant topics. And also discover new tools. And as always, please ask us questions, engage in conversation with us. We love that. All right, and how are we going to do that? Really 4 ways, probably more than 4 ways by the end of it. But by understanding exactly how our members engage with us, that's something that we always talk about, but really diving into it and not just listening, but turning that into action. That's really important. By knowing how effective our marketing campaigns are, right? We always talk about how many campaigns we've done, how many clicks, things like that, but are you really following what channels are working? Is it actually leading people to the action you wanted them to take? You know, going through and doing a call to action, excellent, but do you know if it's working or not? And how do you connect that into some sort of visualization or tool in order to track that? By analyzing our learning and education data, and then by listening to our members and non-members in real time. All right, so your greatest asset, right? So your members and your customers. Without them, right, we don't have data to even analyze. And so sometimes we focus on other things happening inside the organization, and we really want to take it back to our members and customers. When I say customers, I'm mostly referring to non-members or potential customers. And thinking about all of the data that your members and non-members are generating, right? And so just to go back to what this holistic or 360 view really looks like, you have behaviors, you have social, you have demographics, and you have transactions. Typically people think of transactions, but may not think of some of those other pieces of the pie. So over on the left-hand side, transactions, that one's pretty easy. It's joining, it's buying, it's products, it's orders. Some other things, volunteering, demographic data, that we're always trying to break things down by geography or by demographics to really dive into who's doing what and why. Behavioral data, so really following what people are doing. And this one is key and makes up a large portion of our data that is often ignored when it comes to analytics. And so the other thing, people may use surveys and ask people, you know, what are you most interested in? And I think I've used this example before. I may say, you know, accounting and finance, because that's my background. But if you watch what I'm clicking on and what I'm doing on a daily basis on your website, it's probably not around those topics. Government data is to start thinking about third-party data that you can combine. That's usually free and publicly available. So census data, Department of Labor data. And then the last bullet point, I think a lot of associations are really starting to focus on, and this is other third-party industry information and benchmarking information. And so how can you do this, right? So thinking about how can you turn it into a member benefit? How can you productize? How can you really start to leverage this? So thinking about all of those different components and all of the data that you could potentially be using. And then once you have kind of an idea of what your data sources are, you may start to think about different ways to leverage it, but all of that doesn't necessarily mean anything if you can't transform it into insights, if you can't transform it into an action. And so to get there, of course, inventory all of your data sources, determine data health. I mean, this deserves to be more than a bullet point, but this is just one step in the process of turning this data into insights. Brainstorm some use cases, get together a working team, develop some hypothesis, explore findings, and then the last bullet point a lot of times has been the more difficult thing for people to do, which is take action. And I kind of laughed. I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were doing a virtual discussion with the COO at NCA CPA. And he had made a comment. He was like, you know, this has really given us an opportunity to make that jump. You know, we've wanted and we've been thinking about doing things, and they are really great at using it to back up their decision making, but still making that leap or that jump is difficult. And so to him, we were talking about the silver lining that's come out of this, if there is one. And that was the one thing. It's really transformed their decision-making process, and then it's allowed them to go ahead and make that leap. I mean, it's kind of like, why not, right? So I encourage everybody to do that, kind of take that next step. So let's think about what you typically measure. These are two metrics that a lot of associations are looking at. Current members by member type, you might break them down and look at all your current members and then dive into those, run different campaigns for those segments, etc. When it comes to events, regardless if it's a virtual event now, you're looking at registrations by weeks out. And now really interesting too, comparing your virtual event that you're trying to do compared to how quickly or the trend of your in-person event that may have happened previously, and really looking at how those trends have changed and kind of maybe even setting a new baseline for those. So we're going to encourage you to think outside of the box, think outside of, just those basic metrics that you might be looking at. And what about all of this text? You often hear us talking about unstructured data. Where does this come from? So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places that you may get some text out of. So community discussions, and Reggie has a great story around that and how you can leverage that into action. Again, that's where you're really going to make impact, is when you can leverage your data into insights and turn those insights into action. So biographies, event descriptions, publications, books, session speaker proposals, one that people might not think about, but really thinking about what's top of mind on your speaker proposals. What are those topics? You might then be able to break that down by geography. What's, a hot topic over in the US may be different than in a different country. Voice calls and messages. So another place where you can really be listening to your members, and you may not be really. So taking those and doing some text analytics can really allow you to start listening to your members. And that's largely what we're talking about, listening to your members and then communicating effectively and timely back to them. All right, so our first poll, and we want to hear from you. So switch back over to your other screen. And are you currently leveraging any of the following unstructured data sources to drive member communications? So community platform, social media, and web analytics such as search terms. So not necessarily just following people's clicks, really looking at the unstructured piece of web analytics, which the easiest one is the search terms. All of the above or none of the above. I'll give you guys a minute or two to do that.
So Julie, it says I can't vote. How come I can't vote?
Because you're a panelist.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But everybody else should be able to vote. If you're having the same issue, please raise your hand or throw something in the chat. We'll make sure we fix that for you.
But Reggie, you got a microphone and a camera, so you can just say your answers for the
Yeah,
audience.
what is your answer?
You don't have to vote.
Right. I can do what I want, can't
You can do what you want.
That is correct.
I? I'll behave.
I mean, yours is all the above, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like you guys leverage all the different pieces of data, which we're going to get to hear about.
And there's no questions coming through yet, Julie, but definitely some interesting drink choices.
Like what? Any ones you want?
So far, the Dirty Shirley is winning
Yeah.
in my mind. The Maker's Mark, Ginger Ale, and Bada Bing Cherry. And I don't even know what Bada Bing Cherry is, but that just sounds delicious.
That does. That's like the one downfall. I love presenting and sharing, but I'm usually like vigorously in the chat. I'm trying not to watch it, but I can see it going and I'm like,
Yeah, Heidi's got it. Heidi's got the award. So
Yeah,
far.
Heidi's winning. So somebody better come up with something better than a Dirty Shirley that I've never heard of it also.
All right. Couple more seconds and then we're going to reveal the results.
And just a reminder, if you guys post questions or anything, I will just interrupt people just like this and ask them questions throughout the event.
All right, let's see, share some data here.
Hmm.
So none of the above is
Wow.
the highest.
Yep.
So that's shocking. You know what that is? That's a great opportunity. That's what that is.
That's what it is.
That's awesome. 19% is all the above. And with the most is the community platform, which is really exciting because that's definitely where you have members talking about what's important to them. And so how critical to be able to leverage that and use that in your strategies.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people using social media and search terms being the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, so getting to why this all matters, we're typically getting down to a call to action a lot of times when we're going through the marketing piece. So personalized call to action performed 202% better than basic call to action. So if that's not a reason, then I don't know what is. And this actually comes from HubSpot. And I referred to this a little bit earlier, but this is really figuring out not only how your campaigns are doing, but what channels are feeding in and being the most successful. And that might look different to different segments of your audience. And so being able to work at a high level and anything you build, being able to go down to the lowest level of granularity so you can really start to dive into what's working for who. Because the behaviors of your members and non-members are going to be different. How they prefer to be communicated to is going to be different. And so, you know, here we have an example, and at the bottom, this includes things like email, certainly one that we throw out a lot of call to actions, but also Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, mail, telemarketing. And so really listing out all of the channels and doing some testing to see what's going to work and what's not going to work for different segments of your membership, and then tracking that is equally as important, because some things may not work. And really that's okay, because now you have something to pivot pretty quickly, try something else, see where you're getting results, and continuing to do that. And this is registrations by weeks out. So obviously the call to action here is register for my event. And then you can see what's working, so you can really build that traction to get people more engaged.
That's cool.
And it's all about customer expectations. I think that's something, you know, that's been a focus certainly for us. And I know, Reggie, it has been for you too. And this is a statistic that is not very shocking. I actually am shocked it's actually not higher, but 75% of consumers are more likely to purchase from a company that knows their name, their purchase history, and recommends products based on their preferences. I mean, that's certainly what type of consumer I am. I prefer, you know, to read things that are relevant to my interests or purchase something. Yeah, Amazon. See, I'm still following the chat. See, focus. That's a great example. When you go on to Amazon or something like that, that's customers' expectations, and your members and your potential members are no different than the rest of us as consumers and have the same expectations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Reggie to talk a little bit more about customers' expectations and data, and how ASAE is leveraging data for relevant member content and communications. Take it away, Reggie.
All right, so I have requested remote control.
You should have it.
Good. So first of all, folks, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. You know, usually we have time to see each other at various meetings and things and have those kinds of discussions, and obviously we haven't. So I look at and see what mothers are having to do right now, in addition to putting up with their husbands full time, which is probably more than they can bear. But thank you for that as we start this, and a special shout out to my nieces over at Cynthia's house. I think she said they might be with her right now, so a shout out to them as well. You know, we're talking about engagement, and one of the things that I always think about is asking people what's your definition of engagement. So if panelists want to say that in the chat, that would be interesting to see what people think of as engagement. So for me, I'll tell you two quick things. One is it's not marketing. You know, marketing might be involved in engagement, but it's not marketing. And it's also not sales. A lot of people kind of try to measure their engagement by the number of things that people buy from them. Well, those are sales. So we've got ways to think about those things differently as we go along. So two quick stories and then two major problems that came out of those stories. And both of these are the result of me being out in the field and asking our members some questions. So some of you probably have heard this before. We started our organizational membership probably 2 or 3 years ago now, 3 years ago now. And so I was out asking various people, stopping at organizations, what does this feel like to you? And so for the first one, I was talking to the CEO and I said, what did it feel like when we did our onboarding with you and kind of introduced you to ASAE? And he put his hands on his hips and said, well, Reggie, it felt like you backed up the damn ASAE dump truck and dumped all your stuff on me and left me to figure out how to deal with it. So that's the first quick story, and some lessons learned about that will come up shortly. The second one is I was talking to an organization's senior team, and we're all sitting around the table, and I'm asking all those questions that you would imagine, like, what do you need from me? What are the things we can help you with? And blah, 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 blah. And while I'm having that conversation, there's a lady sitting over on the side, just like glaring at me, flat out glaring at me. And so I turned this way and to not look at her and continue my conversation with everybody else. But I could feel those eyes burning in the back of my neck. So finally I turned to her and said, what? And she said, every time I need something from ASAE, I go to the website and I log in. When I have to hire new people, we go to ASAE's career services and we do that stuff there. And when I need to do research, I go to ASAE's foundation page and do my research. Long story short, she said, I could tell that she was walking through all of our properties and she was using them in the way that I would want her to use them. And after she finished, she looked at me and pointed her finger and she said, you should know me. You should know me. And that just stuck with me like a ton of bricks. We've got all of these systems in place and things that we ask our members to do. And when they do those things, when they do those things, she was exactly right. We should know her. And so we don't. And that just stuck with me. So keep that in mind as people are using your various systems and things, that's their expectation. And I think Julie was talking about that earlier. She's the kind of consumer that once you use a place for a certain amount of time, kind of on you to know. So I went back to our staff and I asked our staff a couple of questions. I asked our staff, do our systems listen well? And I was kind of pacing around as I was talking to them actually, but do our systems listen well? And they were baffled by the question. And so I asked it again, do they listen in a way that I know and that the systems know our members? And then I brought up this concept with them of dark data. And so ASAE's been doing some research, as some of you already know. It's called Foresight Works. And one of the briefs in there talks about dark data. And in particular, we always call it unstructured data, but it's that data that you typically don't think to use. We use transactional data all the time. My thing about transactional data is it gives you a really good, clear view of what just happened. It doesn't tell you anything about what you need to be thinking about moving forward. And so we've got the transactional data, but I'm telling you, from my experience, the richest data we have right now comes from this stuff that we typically refer to as dark data. But before I look at it, this is the framework that here the data I've been using to think about things for our members. There's behavioral data, which is the data that comes from your CRM system and your marketing automation systems and those kinds of things. And some of that comes from social media as well. But you've got this darker unstructured data, which I'm going to spend some time talking about. And obviously we've got the transactional data that we do things with. So here's a good example, and I broke them down into two pieces. The chart on the far right is the one that shows search terms for ASAE for the last, I think it's for the last 13 months. And it's search terms mostly coming out of the Collaborate discussions. And you can see this green thing that's right there in the middle. That's what you think it is. That's COVID. That's COVID in all its glory. And there's probably several other COVID kind of things like Corona and things like that. And our staff has been using that a lot. We use this chart to figure out what are the things that are trending that we need to be paying attention to. What might we do in terms of education sessions because of that? What might we do in terms of content? But the other day I reminded them that we also have this chart that says, what have people been searching for in the last 30 days? You know, I did that particularly to make them help us realize it's not just COVID. Yeah, COVID's a big thing for us right now, but there's other needs in the community as well. And so them being able to look at that and seeing, and this is related obviously, but for the last 30 days, the biggest discussion in our community has been about virtual conferences. And it's virtual conferences, and it's virtual exhibits, and it's virtual this and virtual that. And so, you know, when we saw that, we did do a session around how do you move from face-to-face to virtual. You know, I'm thinking about, do we need to have a virtual conference demo days where people see a lot of products? If you think that's a good idea, let me know in chat now, and I can use that to kind of get our staff to move a little bit about that. But you can see that the uses of this data twofold. You know, what's been happening over time in a long-term view and what's been happening right now. And so I'm going to suggest that there's a more useful framework as well. And the more useful framework, what I'm going to add to that is, you know, I don't know where we got off thinking that we can't just ask people what they need, you know, well, just ask folks. And so I had spent a fair amount of time looking for a tool that will allow me to ask all of our members what they need, not just ask certain people what they need. And thank God for my colleague, Dave Will. I know he's on this call somewhere for sure, but created a product called Prop Fuel. Ask him about the name. I didn't name it. He named it Prop Fuel. But I will tell you that it's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots from it. And the way it works, and works very well, I'll tell you, is it allows us to create engagement campaigns. And so imagine that I sat down and I could figure out, here's the questions I would love to ask our members over time, okay? And not just segments of members. I want to be able to ask all of our members questions that surface need. That's really what I'm trying to do. What do people need from us right now? And so this is an example of one of those campaigns that we're doing. I think we're doing this with all new and renewing members, but we could do it with all marketing people or all communications people. You kind of get the idea. The cool part is we can also specify what actions we would take for those people based on how they answered the question. So you can see right here, suppose somebody says, I'm interested in professional development. That was the answer, the way they answered that question. Well, what we can do about that is 2 or 3 things. One, we can immediately say, here's the learning options we have. Okay? And if we would have gotten more specific about what they wanted to learn, we can start to push them to very specific resources immediately, not over some period of time, but immediately. But we can also be there in case they want to talk to us. And I can tell you, I've been measuring the result, and I was particularly interested in this group of people, our new and renewing members, because they're a different demographic than our traditional members, a lot younger, a lot in different levels of the organization. And I can tell you what I saw happen at our virtual MMCC, and I'm going to attribute it to this campaign, but other stuff as well, that younger demographic was there. Because we had started to engage them this way. And that's pretty freaking remarkable to me. But if you haven't checked out this, do check out Prop Fuel and think about it in terms of a campaign, an ongoing engagement campaign that you can have with your members. I think I can back this up a little bit. So what you see there on the left-hand side is the first of a question I think we ended up with like 12 to 14 questions that we ask on the time intervals. So once we start this thing, it just goes and does its own thing. It goes and does its own thing. Really cool in terms of the kind of stuff we're getting back from people. Okay. So I got this meter that I use all the time about how cool are things. This is stupid cool on the stupid cool meter. This is one of the better tools I've seen in a long time. Okay, so you'll see this meter from time to time as I'm talking about stuff. So here's what I was able to do. I was trying to think about a couple of things. One, if I am able to determine that need, how do I store that in a way that makes it useful for everybody? So I've been bugging Dave, and I'm going to ask everybody to be thinking about this. What does a needs database look like in a way that everybody can take advantage of it? So I created something in Power BI that allows me to go in and do that. So you can see right here, I highlighted technology, and what I have here is all the technology questions people had based on this campaign that we're doing. And so what our staff is doing is working their way through all of these questions and interacting with the member who asked those questions. But more importantly, I could click on any one of these segments of people and see what are the things that group needs from us. Okay, pretty cool to do. I can go in and click on large staff and say, what does large staff people need from us? Or I can go in and click on association professionals as opposed to consultants and say, what do they needs from us? So this is the beginning for us of a needs database. Pretty cool for us to be able to do that kind of thing. So a couple of things that I really want to stress with this is that engagement is a two-way street. I mean, you have to be having conversations with your members and think of it as conversations, not just a what do I have to sell you conversation, but a what do you need kind of conversation. You know, the final thing that I'll talk about is that, and I don't think we're alone, is, you know, we haven't taken advantage of mobile anywhere near where the capabilities are. Yeah, all of us have event apps and things like that, and we might have a little bit of a community app, but we really need to think of mobile as the thing like we use it on a day-to-day basis. You know, this thing stays with me, and anytime I want to do any interaction about anything, it's either this or my iPad. It's not my desktop. It's not those things. So this, I think we need to start to take advantage of it. And here's an example of stuff we're doing in the Clowder app, and I'll tell you, you guys know I do a fair amount of research before I choose a partner to work with. And I had been looking for an app, a persistent app that could be there year round for us. And I looked a long time until I found Clowder. But glad I did, so we've got our general news in there. We've got what I call me-specific news, which is based on your profile with us and our interest inventory that you can take. We've got our event apps in there, and we're getting ready to port most of our events into there. And so in the very near future, you won't see us have a separate app for our meetings. This app will be the app that we use for our meetings like we use everywhere else. We've also have access to collaborate right there in that app. And Brad and I have talked about how we in the future might make that a more seamless kind of thing, but it's pretty seamless right now. But get yourself something like this where your members can interact with you based on how they want to do it. So I'll stop right there, Julie. And
yeah, no, that's great. That was one of my questions, if the community data was feeding into this as well. So that's really amazing to see how all of this can be ramped into mobile so you can engage with your members year round. That's the goal, right? Not just one-off or at your event. We really need to be meeting our members where they are using the tools and technology they use, which is, again, very similar to us. If you think about yourself, what do you use? You know, my phone's right here, screen a little shattered from all of my kids, but it's still always right here. And before we move on, there was one question that came up about where you store the needs from your members in this ideal state or this ideal, world to get to where you guys are going. And so what database would that be? What does that look like at the end? I know it's an iterative process, but what does that look like?
I'll tell you, I've got a company that I'm working with now. We're in the middle of kind of rethinking our infrastructure. And I'll share that with everybody as we go along, but I'll tell you what's at the center of it doesn't look like what's at the center of it right now. And for most organizations, and to me, what's going to be at the core of it is these needs. I jokingly call it my new NMS. It's my needs management system. But that's going to be at the core of the system we're building. And it's going to be, I'm turning it into a database so that it'll be a place where if anybody on staff wanted to go look and see by demographic or by number of years member or however, here's what the needs look like. And what's going to be put into that is the stuff that's coming from the prop fuel stuff. It's going to be some synopsis of stuff coming out of Collaborate and with some sentiment assigned to it, so I'll know how urgent these needs are or how happy people are sad about those needs, that sort of thing. But that's going to be the core of what we built. So I don't have it built yet. I've got what I've showed you built so far.
A lot.
And I'm testing the usage of it to see what that's going to feel like. But I'm getting close. I'm close.
Yeah.
Getting close.
2 more questions, and then we'll dive into how this mobile engagement really works. So how many people do you have working on the design for dark data and kind of, I guess, leveraging the dark data piece of it?
Me and Kristen.
I know. I knew the answer, but it's really 2, and not full time. And so it can be done is, I think, a really important message here.
And I would certainly share what we've done, Julie, and you know that. So, if anybody on, for example, the stuff that we've done, people know we use Higher Logic's platform for our community. And Julie and her team helped us develop the visualizations we use for it. And I would certainly make those available to whoever wants to use them.
Yeah, great. All right, so I think there might have been a couple of questions. We'll wait till the end and David can pull those out of the chat or Q&A. So Brad, let's dive into how we really get into mobile engagement and what this means and how it works.
Excellent. Thank you to you, Julie, as well as David, Reggie. Really appreciate all the kind words as well. Couple of years into it, it's been an absolute blast. And to your earlier point, we're really just kind of scratching the surface, I think. So lots of opportunity to think about this as we continue. Okay, there we go. Great. So as Reggie posed the question to all of us, so what Clowder does is we built our platform from the ground up with year-round membership engagement in mind. So our definition of that, how we think about year-round engagement, really falls into kind of 3 key buckets. So it's organization to member, member to member, and sponsor to member. So we've got well over 150 features, but they really kind of boil down into those 3 key buckets to drive that real engagement. And obviously with COVID-19 upon us, what I kind of talk about and talk to our clients, everything that I've been talking about for 3 years basically became a crescendo in almost overnight fashion. So everything that we're talking about, how to engage, best practices in driving that engagement is really what we've been kind of focusing on and seeing. Okay, I think I got the control here, Julie. Great, thank you. So just as a way to put everything in perspective, thinking about the volumes, the one comment I really want to challenge everyone to think about is, sure, we can all find really negative things that have happened to us personally, professionally, about COVID, but there's also some significant silver linings. There are winners we all, as business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders, have the opportunity to search for those winners. And I think if you look nothing more at volume, we're all on a Zoom call today. And I think, and I checked it this morning, it's still the #1 free app. And think about the magnitude in which Zoom has grown in the last 60 days, almost over 20x. So 10 million to 200 million active users. Obviously, a huge success story. If you were to ask me, I think mobile is by far and above a huge winner in and around the crisis and how it's connecting us. Mobile is essentially giving us a one-on-one connectivity with our membership and also with our staffs, right? Because we're all at home. And then that last bullet point puts it in perspective. And to me, all it means is we have to do more and drive further to make connection a priority. Because we're all going to start, if we haven't already, felt those effects of being disconnected. And as our offices may or may not come back, I heard yesterday the CEO of Twitter said, we're definitely not coming back before September. And if you don't want to come back, that's fine in terms of the office. So those are some significant leading indicators that say, how are we getting our information today? And how are we going to move forward? And how is all this changing? And how does mobile kind of play a role in that? Usual suspects, where are we getting our information? News, social media, emails. But the better question is, how does your really important information cut through all that, which oftentimes are referred to as the noise, to get your specific information across? And frankly, it's not all a priority one, right? Sometimes you have to think through all these channels and use them collectively to really drive forward. And sometimes it's surprising to hear, me being in the mobile business, I'm not anti-email. I'm saying send less email, more targeted email, blend it in with a push notification, a news story, so that we're using the devices that Reggie talked about, we use every single day. So I believe it's a failed strategy to think your members who are consumers need to change their behavior just to connect with you. Why? They should not. They should be able to use their same 5+ hours a day that they are on their device. Reggie just said it. Now, I know he's in the millennial category of age, but even still, you go right to your device, right? Even with your laptop open, even with your desktop open, you're going to your device, right? So if you have a year-round membership app, it becomes that central location, almost that on-ramp or mission control to tie all these key features together. I've also sprinkled in some actual examples of what our customers have been doing. Something that I have found that's been really interesting, and almost our 100 clients, 95% are associations. Some of the state level groups have just knocked it out of the park in terms of using their mobile app. The quality, look at the quality, this is the Pennsylvania Dental Association, of their push notifications. So they're sharing directly with their membership from what they have organizationally, what's happening out of public officials. But what's really been exciting to watch is how are they sharing amongst themselves, right? How are they leveraging those forums? What are the forms I need to fill out to get PPP? What are the common mistakes people are making? Oh yeah, watch out for line 72 because people are missing that one and your application's getting pushed back. Push notifications worth their weight in gold with mobile, especially in a time of crisis. We've all been able to see it. Again, Texas Restaurant Association literally giving real-time breaking news updates to their membership about, curbside pickup, how you should reach out to your government officials. What are the new updates in the policy today? Are we in phase 0 or phase 1? What can I do? And a lot of these folks, to Julie's earlier point about member, non-member, our platform allows you to segregate. So you take a really powerful platform and make it multidimensional. Maybe you want to, based on all the data that you found in Acumen that says, this is the way members behave, this is the way non-members behave, why would we send them the same exact message? Let's target it specifically and let's tailor it inside of the news feed, but let's let that travel all the way through. Why are we showing them news that could be bifurcated when in fact events is all one big group? No. Continue that theme all the way through. Forums is a great example, and likely the best example of that member-to-member engagement level, right? So the interesting thing, and Julie brought up the question earlier about, you know, staff time. We get asked that all the time. How much staff is it going to take? Well, my answer is always the same. Think about the load that your members can carry. You know, we've all heard the term influencer, Instagram, you know, LinkedIn, you name it, YouTube. They're all influencers, right? Your members are the same thing. So if Reggie is finding out that he has younger members who are engaging for professional development, and you start to look in the analytics to see what they're doing in the app and feed that to a broader profile, those are your future influencers. They're going to be happy because you're giving them a forum, right? And they help carry the load so that it's not always falling on your staff. Well, not sure what happened there.
That's Julie. Blame it on Julie. It's Julie doing stuff.
Keep me on my toes. A resource center. So, you know, how do you make boring documents a little bit more exciting? Just put them in the line site of where your members are. Make it easy for them to access those documents. You know, every one of our customers at our guidance created a coronavirus resource folder and then dropped in helpful information. Because once it's in there, it's searchable, then you can start to share it through all of your native functionality, whether you're iOS or your Android. But don't make them go somewhere else. Allow them to go to one central location to consume, to communicate, to share, to look up, to grab documents, because that's where their attention is already. So easy, accessible is the name of the game. Something that we did not expect that we're pleasantly surprised with is we've always promoted messaging because we have a full messaging platform inside of Clowder, direct messaging and group messaging. It's often thought of about how to share content from the news feed, perhaps with another member to have a one-on-one dialogue. What we've also seen is because we're all remote now, we're seeing group messaging inside of their year-round membership app so that staffs can quickly communicate with each other. So that's been really kind of fun to see, where staffs or departments created groups inside of messaging to continue that dialogue. You know, Reggie nailed it on the head: virtual event, virtual event, virtual event. It's happening. We're talking about it constantly. What we're seeing with our clients, this is an example of a user group client who in 2 weeks went from a live event, switch it to a virtual event, 400 attendees. It actually went so well, they've added 3 more virtual events in the next 90 days. And how they use the app, it was one of many tools, but it really acted as the framework. So it could have that back and forth discussion, whether it was just a comment or a message, or it was a survey, a rating, perhaps it was a poll. And of course, you know, we're not an event app, but we do have all the event features that you would expect, because our goal, our lens is, what are you doing before, during, and after the event? And by connecting all of your events, they're great opportunities to create hooks, right? We're always looking for hooks to keep your members coming back. So what we promote, our philosophy is, do not look at features in silos, connect the value of all of those features. So when you send out a specific push notification, whether it's to everyone or to segmented groups, you have the opportunity to drive them to a discussion forum, drive them to a specific newsfeed post that might be really effective for them, allow them to interact, allow them to engage. And you know, Reggie pointed out, it's that two-way exercise, right? I'm not just telling you, I'm telling you, but allowing you to respond. And that's kind of where the magic happens. And then of course, you know, discussion forums, and you know, we have many customers that have vibrant higher logic communities, and we just recommend pulling it right inside the app, just like ASAE. ASUS does a great job of that, Todd Tolbert. And then, you know, some of our customers just use our native forums. So, you know, we're flexible, and you know, you can do it any which way you want. Private chats, like I said, as well as the detailed chats. So as I kind of wrap up, we have been asking ourselves a lot of very fundamental questions that I think also hold true to you, and saying, you know, are you doing enough, right? We are working around the clock to come up with new best practices, go deeper on best practices, playbooks. How do we provide that value to make sure that the app and mobile is not just here for now and supporting COVID-19, but really as we continue on? And, you know, my question that I ask all the time is, when it's all over, when it's all said and done and we're on the other side, did you do enough? Because every expense will be reviewed, and just because they were a member for the last 20 years, they're going to really look at the value proposition. They're going to look at, did you help me in a time of need? And I think it's a fundamental question that every organization, every business will have to answer to. We talk an awful lot about modernizing your tools. This is not just for big national organizations. It's for, like I said, state level groups, federated groups. And, you know, a quick story, when I first came into this industry on the hotel side, back then in the mid to late 90s, every single organization asked themselves, do I really need a website? And obviously that sounds silly to say today, but that was the predominant question for at least 5 years. I don't know if this web thing is going to catch on. I mean, I have a beautiful magazine, I have regional meetings, and I have an annual event. I'm not sure I need a website. Mobile is almost at that exact mirror level. Do I really need, you know, my site's mobile responsive. I mean, it is 2020. It ought to be, right? It has to be mobile responsive. 95% of Facebook's activity is mobile. I'll leave you with this final slide. If there's any additional value that we can provide, we have a whole dedicated page here. There's recorded webinars. We did a 30-page coronavirus playbook. There's other playbooks in there that, you know, you could probably find some value with. You know, we're in the fight with everybody here. So if there's anything that we can do to help, you know, please get in touch. And we're big fans of strategic partnerships. So, you know, we're just honored to be included today.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, that was really good information. I love the positive attitude, the energy, and it's so funny that you compared mobile to web. I never really thought about that, but that's so true on where we're at, and thinking like, why wouldn't we have our members be able to go right to the device that they always have with them to get what they need all the time, right? It seems like such a simple concept and really great, awesome tool that you guys have. So thank you for sharing a little bit about it. I know it has a lot more rich functionality, so I encourage everybody to reach out to Brad to learn a little bit more about how this works. Really great engagement. So that was totally me trying to click on the chat. See, I told you, I'm like the crazy chat person. So when I messed you up, I was trying to click because it said 15 new messages, and I was like, come on. And meanwhile, funny, real quick, this tea that I had suggested that I'm drinking now says it supports focus. Oh, you guys can't see it. The box here. I'm not so sure because I was like really trying to dive into that chat while I was listening to you. Anyways, we're going to wrap it up, and just some other ways to start thinking about opportunities for analytics. We're talking about all of these great tools. These are all source systems that you can pull back in to really get a 360 view of your members and non-members. And then you lead that into actions to communicate back to your members and non-members. And so using all of these is really critical. And, you know, back to the pool, 30% of us are not doing that. And so, Reggie, we talk about doing show and tells all the time. I would love to do a show and tell of how different people are doing that on different platforms. And so we can really share with everybody some ideas that you can get started on. So with that, I will turn it over to David to wrap us up.
We got a couple questions. I think we got a couple minutes to answer them. So before I close this out, one, Reggie, I'm going to summarize it a little bit, but how are you kind of moving the needle with ASAE and communicating that need and functionality of moving from what you said is the current state of just, looking at standard data points and the member data in your system to that your needs database, so to speak, to drive the organization, and what else is that going to change?
Yeah, so the data is driving it. It really is. We've been using the output from the Collaborate data for a couple of years now, and I can sit here and tell you that every time we've used that data to design a just-in-time program, it's sold out every single time. So it's not like, you got to be really stupid to look to see that and not say, okay, there's something there. So I think our staff seeing that they now have a resource that takes all that guessing and gut busting out of it and saying, no, we can know, and I think that's the thing. We can know now. We don't have to guess anymore. We can know what the need is. So I think that's the one thing. The other thing is, the tools that are there now that make it available to see that data differently. It's not just, an Excel spreadsheet where you got to go down and have count through the things. No, you can bring up a dashboard anytime you want and see what the need is. And I think that's what's driving it more than anything else. The data's driving it.
And I assume when you say stupid, that's with a U, not two O's, right?
That's right. I'm making a distinction.
That does not fall on the Reggie meter.
That does not fall on the Reggie meter. And then kind of a general question. So as you think about, you're talking a lot about apps and you're talking about getting rid of your event app, and there was some little conversation about it. Are there any, you say you don't want to have an event app anymore, you want to have a engagement all year round app that you talk about. Are there any other services or products that, having that type of app is going to replace or take the place of that you're currently using as you think through it? Either one of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brad or Reggie.
So I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you that what I'm getting ready to, Brad and I are going to be meeting soon. and my goal is for Brad to tell me what I can't do. That's going to be my goal. We're in the middle of rethinking all of our infrastructure, and I'm going to finally do what I've been talking about doing forever, which is mobile first. And so every step of the way, I'm going to say, Brad, I'm getting ready to do this thing right here. What can I do? Brad, I'm getting ready to do analytics. Why can't I do all of my analytics on the mobile device? Every step of the infrastructure, I'm going to ask him what I can't do. And for those things that he says I can't do, I'm going to challenge us to come up with a way to do them.
And then one last question I'll ask you, Brad. You can pile on Reggie's too, but statistically speaking, I guess you guys have looked at a lot of data, and if somebody asks if they have a membership base that's a highly senior population, do you still recommend the full mobile experience, or what is data showing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave you with a couple thoughts on that, because we do hear this a lot, and usually what happens, we see it live, because we do go to events and support our clients kind of in the trenches, and it's usually it's the stereotype that doesn't hold water. So we'll get some 70-ish-year-old person that says, well, I don't do apps. And we say, well, that's interesting. Can I take a look at your phone? How do you write letters to your grandchildren, or do you FaceTime? Well, of course we FaceTime. So do you do iMessaging? Well, yeah, of course. Have you ever checked the weather on your app every day? Have you ever used Waze or Google Maps all the time?
All the time.
So you're improperly putting yourself in a hole where you don't exist. One of our best new customers, to also put it in perspective, is the Texas Retired Teachers Association. So
awesome.
Just by definition, they're older. But what, credit to them, what they told us, and we challenged them because we hear that question a lot, is, yeah, but every year they're getting younger. It's like, that's insightful. That's smart. That's a great way to think about it. And it's interesting, as an industry, a knee-jerk reaction sometimes is to say, well, can you give me a case study on, right? And you're always looking kind of either at another association. My advice is your best case studies are Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Yep.
So look no
Agreed.
further than those, and you will get all of your answers.
So,
Great,
so
great,
Brad,
great answer.
I don't know who asked that question, but you know, as I get older and older every year, I'm starting to resent those questions about old.
I know. I feel like I'm relying on more and more technology, and especially mobile.
And the other
I can actually move it closer to my eyes. I have to go like this with my computer all the time.
The other thing I would tell people is the best case study is yourself.
Yeah.
That's the best case study. Look at everything that you do on the mobile device. And, you know, I have to remind our staff that because people don't use the things that we offer mobile doesn't mean they don't like mobile. They don't like the things we're offering mobile.
Right. You might
So
let's
figure that out a different way.
Look at your product, not mobile as a whole.
Right.
Well, thank you guys to the panel. Obviously, thank to everybody for hanging with us and listening in. Once again, as always, I hope your minds are full and your cups are empty. And we really hope that you can join us in the future discussions. Posted up here, you see our upcoming schedule, just a couple logistics. This is a recurring meeting, so if you're registered for one, you're registered for them all. You do get weekly notifications. We have detailed descriptions on the website, and we do record every one of our events. So if you don't make it one week, you can view the recording. For our next installment next week, I'll be leading a discussion on short and long-term strategies in performance measurement for association leaders. I'm joined by a couple of association executives and longtime A2 clients and one of our staff, and they're going to share how data is helping them really manage through a lot of different changes during COVID, and taking the opportunity to experiment and embrace new things that's really going to change and improve their total future operations, not just in the near term. So once again, thank you for a fabulous discussion and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
Thank
See ya.
you.
Happy Thursday.